Good morning. This is VirtualPBX admin training. Going to give people a couple minutes to get logged in. The training lasts about an hour and a half, give or take, just depends on load times. The vast majority of the training will happen in the dashboard, which I'll show you once we get logged in. Feel free to make use of the chat feature within YouTube to ask questions about a feature as I'm going over it. You'll see in the show notes there's a bunch of links there. I'll reference most of them as I come across them, but the last one there at the bottom of the list is the support pages, so that can get you to any guide for any particular feature. The other big one is the top one actually is a business SMS webinar series that was done by a colleague of mine, and basically just covering SMS registration and what you need to know about texting in regards to business phone numbers, as there's some regulations involved with all of that. We do record these trainings, so if you can't stay for the entire time, you can always come back and view the rest at a convenient time for you. That also allows you to share the link with other staff members who need to be system admins. All right, so that way you don't have to tell them all how to do everything. You say, hey, just watch this. This should get you at least a baseline to work with. And I'm trying to think of anything else I need to cover right off the top. I think that's about it. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is our login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. I generally recommend for our admins to bookmark this page. To get logged in, we need 3 pieces of information. First is your username. That's your email address. It should be in all lowercase letters. And that's the email address you use to sign up with us, or what your admin used to create your user. Password is case sensitive. Should have been emailed to you. And then lastly, we need the account name, right? Typically your organization name, or if you signed up under your just personal name, then that's what you'll put in. If your password isn't working, down here at the bottom right, just above the sign-in bar, you ever forgot your info link, you can click on that. It flips the box around. We still need your email address. All right, and then, right, one of the two. We don't need both. So we need either the account name, which is typically the easiest, or a phone number on the account. And that's one of your customer-facing phone numbers, right? So the phone number someone else dials in typically. And then you click on reset password. This will send you an email that's going to have a password reset link, which when you click on it will temporarily sign you in and land you directly on your account user page. Basically, it allows you to change your password and then logs you back out. If you try to navigate away from that page, it will also log you out. So make sure you change that password. Then you come back here, again, you enter your email address, enter that password you just created. And then you also have the option here to click on Remember Me. And then you get logged in. Now, this is my first, if it's your first time logging in, you're not going to get taken to your dashboard page right away, right? I log into this account several times a week. So I'm here on the dashboard page. But that first time logging in, you get taken to your user account page, right? That also where you would go if you had to reset your password. You can get to that page at any time by clicking on your name up here towards the top of the page, just right of center, right? You click on it, it's actually a big pop-up. So it covers the dashboard page. Main thing you change, right, is your password. You could also change, say, your time zone and language, etc. As an admin, you have access to these other areas here on the left. So the account level settings, you can change like your technical contact, time zone, language, etc. The account name, if you need to change that, you actually need to email our billing team, and that's billing at virtualpbx.com. They need to link up or make changes across several different things to make sure everything syncs up properly. Over here on the left is add-ons. This is to add on additional features to your account. Currently, the only add-on you can add is the text forward feature, which simply just allows you to have phone numbers receive texts and send them on typically to an email address. It's not for back and forth communication. Now, some features may increase your bill, and that's something you'd want to double check with either on our product pages or the pricing pages, or you can talk to our account services team. Over here on the left, also under billing, right, you have your access to the billing portal. Right? Click on this will get you there. Basically, you request a PIN number, and that way you can access the billing information, like updating the credit card, seeing previous invoices. Also, the cancel account option. So here, any system admin can close your account. It will close by, basically, it'll end on the current billing cycle, right? So when your billing date comes up, then it'll cancel your account at that point. So you want to make sure you have, you trust the people who you make your system admins. When you're done with everything here, up top right, close. Also, I should point out that first time logging in, the dash wizard pop-ups will be here telling you what certain things are. But when you click close, now you're on our dashboard page. So at the top, your name, right? Click on that to get back to those pages. Most of us to the right of your name have a D&D toggle, right? D&D for do not disturb. I have it currently active on my user, which means I'm not accepting calls. Right, so calls, when someone calls into my main number, enters my extension number, they get sent right to voicemail. Right, I'm not going to be offered calls from a group, etc. Now, if your user has been assigned to the call center, right, so one of the ACD queues, then you'll not have the D&D toggle any longer. And the D&D toggle and queues don't work well together. It can cause problems. All right, little phone icon here. This will open up a new tab and take you to webphone.virtualpbx.net. It has a login page, which is your normal dash login information, right? So your email address, your password, and your account name. Excuse me. The web phone allows you to use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. Now, for your system admins or the first person who signed up for the account, you're going to have a web phone added to your user automatically. For any other user you add later, you'll have to add a web phone to their user as a device in order for them to access the web phone successfully, right? Because they need to have a login page or login information. But once they do that, again, they can use Chrome or Firefox on a computer. Web phone does count as a VoIP phone. Excuse me. The little chat bubble here, this opens up a new tab and takes you to virtualtext.app. It's a website. This is for texting, right? SMS messaging. You have to have it has its own login, which is going to be different from your dash login. So, and you won't have that available. For one, you have to have the feature enabled, but you also have to activate it on the account. So like if you just signed up with us, for instance, you do need to talk to our services team about SMS, about the SMS registration, for example, before they'll enable it on the account, and then you can then enable it on a user. There's also an app you can download to your phone for use with virtual text. All right, little question mark icon. This will open up a chat window at the bottom right of your browser. So you can speak to a support person to help you with a particular feature. The three horizontal line icon here, that's your menu icon. This takes you to other parts of your dashboard or the dash account. Now, most of our training, as I mentioned here, is going to be here in the dashboard. I'll touch on some of these others to some degree. Some of them I'm going to reference links within the show notes. And then little arrow here to the right, that is your logout icon, right? This logs you out of the website. Over here on the left, right, I have dashboard is highlighted. And then these are other main sections of my account, right? Main number, auto attendance, etc. Most of these are core features. A couple of them, text forward is an add-on and auto attendance is a plan specific feature, but we'll be touching on these at least to some degree. All right, going across the top here, so dashboard for VPBX New Hire Sandbox. Caller ID, if I click on this, those are the big box. This pull down allows me to select one of my main numbers. So if you have multiple, you can select one. Otherwise, it would just be the default. This phone number becomes your default number. So for like your VoIP phones, so let's say you use a web phone right off the bat. By default, this will be the phone number that shows up as your outbound caller ID when you make a call using the web phone or any other VoIP device. The company caller ID name, in the box here to the right, you can enter up to 15 characters. It will count spaces and special characters as part of that 15 that we then associate with your phone number. All right, so whenever you make an outbound call, we send the number and we send this name information. Company emergency information, or E911. Wants a North American address here. For Canadian customers, the zip code is where you would put your postal code. And in the state, that is where you would put your 2-character province abbreviation. Right? And then you click on Save Changes. Now, after clicking Save Changes, if you've entered information here in the company caller ID name field, that information gets transmitted to the other carriers who support this feature. It takes them approximately 3 business days to update their servers. Now, we can only control what we send out. Right? So when it comes to caller ID name, right? However, there's some things to know about that. First of all, whenever you make an outbound call, no matter what kind of phone you use, right, your call goes through several carriers before it reaches its destination. Right? Typically speaking, right? So like if you use your cell phone and you're calling someone who has a Comcast phone number, right? It's not from your cell phone carrier directly to Comcast. There's usually other carriers in between. So from your VoIP phones, when you make an outbound call, all of those carriers have to support the CNAM feature for that CNAM information get transmitted and be received by that last carrier, the receiving carrier. The receiving carrier, they have final say about what shows up on the phones on their network. The ideal circumstance is they see the number and name that we send and they pass that through, right? Everybody's happy. The most common thing we see is that the receiving carrier sees the number and the name, but they don't send the name through. They only send the number through. That is what your cell phone carriers typically do by default. Right? And then their third option, which is a muddle, basically. It's they see the name and the number, they strip off the name, look up the number under their own database that we may not have access to, and use that name instead. That doesn't come up very often. Again, by far the most common is you send a call out and they only see the number. They don't see the name. And that is 95% of the time, that's when you're trying to call a cell phone. Like my cell phone provider, they want to charge me about $10 a month to have that company name information show up on every call that comes into me. That's not something I'm willing to pay. Excuse me. All right, hold music. So one thing to point out, for hold music on Dash, call comes into your system, rings your staff member's VoIP phone. Right? They pick up the call, right? Answer the call, and then they press hold on their VoIP phone. That's when this hold music file will play. So it's after your call has been received. Now you can upload your own hold music file. Click upload here. Click browse, find a .wav, .wav, or .mp3 file up to 1 megabyte in file size. Right? Click the up arrow icon, click Save Changes. Now, I recommend that you have that recording in mono, not in stereo. That gives you a longer duration file, potentially, right? So a 1 megabyte MP3 can be up to 5 minutes, right? And so if you have it in mono. Now, ours is part of main number. I don't want to set up main number yet until you have users and devices and potentially groups. So we're going to cover those before we get to the main number. So we'll skip this for right now. Here I've got total users. So I have 5 users on my account, right? So these are people who make and receive calls. Typically speaking, our plans are based on a per user basis. So the more users you have, the higher your bill is going to be. Excuse me. Then I have my total devices, 12. and then a breakdown of what kind of devices they are. First up is cell phone. So you can add a cell phone or landline device or phone number, right, as a device on your account. So we can send calls to your cell phone number. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when we send it to a phone number, so like a cell phone or a landline, you're not going to be able to transfer that call. Right, basically, you have to answer and handle the call, or the customer has to call back in, or you have to have whoever else they need to speak to call the customer back. Next up is soft phone. Soft phone is a software application, uses your internet connection to make and receive calls, so they're VoIP phones. This includes the VirtualPBX soft phone app or any third-party soft phone apps you might be using. It's just a general bucket to let you know how many soft phones you have. Then we've got the web phone, which is that Chrome or Firefox device. And then lastly here that I'm going to cover is a SIP phone. This is a piece of hardware, right? This is a physical VoIP phone, Yealink, Cisco, etc. Typically connects to your via the Ethernet cable to get to your router to get to the internet, right? So a VoIP phone. If you're out shopping, right, you want to look for a SIP phone, right? SIP, right? SIP compliant, SIP compatible. Any other kind of VoIP phone will probably not work unless you can confident you can update the firmware. And even then that could be problematic. Here I have unregistered devices, and that just means I've turned off one of my devices here on my dashboard. Total numbers, 15. That means I have 15 total phone numbers on my account. Your account includes at least one phone number as part of your monthly plan price, right? There'll be some, depending on, you might get something like an extra local number per user, right? If you just signed up, look at the pricing page. It'll give you the breakdown of what you get. So I am probably paying an overage per number because I have 15. Then I've got a breakdown here, assigned numbers and spare numbers, right? Assigned number is I'm using it. Right, so someone can dial an assigned number and expect to speak to someone or leave a voicemail, join a conference, or send a fax. Spare number, I'm not currently using it. Whether it's because I had a number I was using for, like, say, a special promotion that ended, right? So then I put it in spare number so I don't get calls on something that's no longer active. Or it's I'm opening a new location, right? Physical store, but they're not open yet. There's no one there to answer the call, so I don't want the number in service yet either, right? But I want it to start preparing their marketing materials for it. And yes, even if it's spare, you would still count towards your number allotment. USDID, US toll-free. USDID just means a US local number, right? So a number in, say, San Jose, California, USDID, just as if you had one in, say, Orlando, Florida. All right. US toll-free is actually US Canada toll-free, right? 800 number, 888 all the way down to 833. You can have international phone numbers. If you're interested in acquiring one, you want to email our porting team, and that's porting@virtualpbx.com. They need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in. They'll let you know, A, if that's possible, and then B, if there are additional requirements, such as like a, verification of location kind of thing, like a utility bill, or in some cases, like business incorporation papers. Conference bridges, I have 2, and that means I have enabled the conference feature on 2 of my users. Excuse me. Right, so 2 of my users can host or moderate a conference. Right, doesn't mean no one else can join a conference. It's just those 2 are the moderators. I'm gonna go over here to the top right for the main number box here. I got 3 numbers here. These 3 phone numbers all behave the same way. They're all going to the same location on my system. And in this case, they're all going to have the same main greeting, right, and the same menu options. You can obviously have multiple numbers. If you don't want to have a main number, do not assign one there at all. Just from the get-go, just assign it to wherever you're going to have it instead. The system, once it has one there, it wants to keep it there, or keep one number there. The conference room number, you can have multiple conference room numbers if you want. This is a phone number everyone dials to join a conference. That includes your staff. Right? They'll all be prompted to enter the conference number and PIN number once they have joined the conference. The fax box number, you can have one main fax box number. This is your inbound fax number. This also allows you to edit your fax box to allow for outbound faxing if you want to make use of that as well. Right, down here, I have the company directory. There's two options, a CSV file and a soft phone file. They're both technically CSV files. The CSV is strictly to print out, right? So that way it will have your staff members' names, their extension numbers, their email addresses, and their primary devices, right? So if you want a copy of your directory printed out, that allows you to do so. The soft phone version is for use with the VirtualPBX soft phone app on a desktop, right? So if you're using a Mac or Windows PC with our VirtualPBX soft phone, then you can download this file, right? And then upload it to the soft phone on your computer. You will see the status of the other VirtualPBX soft phones on your account, whether they're on a call or not. Or they can even change their availability within the soft phone app to say, hey, I'm away. Right, so like right now, on my soft phone, I say I'm not available for calls. And my colleagues can see I have a little red icon next to my name saying, hey, don't call me. This does not work with other phones though, right? So if I have multiple phones on my user, right, my colleagues aren't going to be able to see that I'm using my Yealink phone, for instance. So it's good if you're only using the VirtualPBX soft phone app, basically, for among your staff. VirtualPBX Store, this opens up a new link, or a new tab, I should say, sorry. It takes you to store.virtualpbx.com, where you can order things like a VoIP phone, among other things. And then the account realm. Every account has its own account realm. The account realm is used primarily for two different things. The first is if you're using a third-party soft phone, it's one of the three pieces of information you need to program or provision that third-party soft phone application. We'll cover that when we get to adding devices. The other thing it's used for is for sending out a fax. So once you have your fax box set up to send out faxes, it's basically via email, right? So once you have it set up, you create an email like you normally do. In the to field of the email, you put the plus sign, the number 1, area code and phone number you're faxing to, little @ symbol, and then you put in your account realm. Then you just need to attach a PDF or TIFF file. Right? The system doesn't look at the to field. It doesn't look at the body of the email. I'm sorry, it doesn't look at the subject line. It doesn't look at the body of the email. Pardon me. Right? It looks at the to field, the from field, and the attachment. Only one attachment per email. If you want a cover sheet as part of your fax, you need to include that as part of your PDF attachment. You also want to make sure you don't have a signature file as part of your email attachment, or as part of your email normally. All right, so that's the dashboard. Next, go over here on the left. We're going to click on the little user icon here, right? The person with the chair or the desk. So this is my users page. The people with the little blue suit icon, those are your system admins, right? So they can do all the stuff we're talking about. Dante, as you see, I think he's in the middle here, right? He's a little gray person icon, right? Not a blue suit. So he is not a system admin. He's a standard user. A standard user has very limited access. Like by default, they can only access their own user portal, which is like checking their voicemail, seeing their call history. They can set up their call forwarding there. That's really about it. So up here at the top, you click on Add User. And you fill out the form, right? So first name, last name, the system wants some sort of text. The email address used for login needs to be unique for each user, right? You don't want to reuse an email, the same email address for multiple staff members. It typically gives you an error when you try to do so. That email address used for login is how the system communicates with your staff, right? That's the email address it uses for a voicemail notification, for password reset, etc. All right, then you have the password field, right? So you create a password for them. Main extension number. You can enter whatever you want to use for extension numbers, right? The system will start you off with extension 1000, right? But you don't have to keep following that. You can just type in a new extension number. I generally recommend making use of 4-digit extensions, as that gives you plenty of versatility and room for growth. Plus, the reason to avoid a single digit extension number is you don't need to assign them, because if you just leave the, well, you could give a single digit extension number, but that limits what you can do with your main menu when we get to that part. Right? You want to reserve like 0 through 9, so people can press on their phone to get to a department, right, or a voicemail box or what have you. Here is this is automatically checked for you. Create a voicemail box for the user, right? So this is, once you click on create user, it will also create a voicemail box for this user automatically. Right? And that voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user, right? So you can create a user with that checked, add a VoIP phone to them, right? So like the web phone or even the VirtualPBX soft phone. They could then dial out from that VoIP phone to hit *98, click send. That's going to log them directly into the voicemail box you just created for them. The system will then walk them through creating a PIN number for their voicemail box and setting up their voicemail greeting. They also have the option to record their name, right? And they would want to do that if they want to show up in the user directory. But then after that, they're basically all set up as far as a voicemail box is concerned. Here's your option to include that user in the user directory. You can change that later if you're so inclined. This here is third option here. Send emails to an alternate address. So if you want the emails to the user to go to a different email address than the one you used for their login, you can do so. All right, you can just click on the little box here and then enter that different email address here. And you can always change this later, right? So like if someone's going to be out of the office for a little while, but you want to make sure the voicemails get delivered to someone else, you could just install it here, and that way those messages get sent to that alternate address, for example. And then here is send credentials to the user. I usually recommend checking this, so that way the new person gets an email welcoming them to their Dash account, has their login information, etc. Right, create user if you only need to add one, create user and add another if you're adding multiple. Once a user is created, you can click on their name, right? So if necessary, you can change their name, right? Someone changes their last name, for example. Here's your option to change their credentials, right? So you can change their email address or their password. You just have to retype it twice. You also have the option here to send the password reset email directly to them so that they can create their own password. You can change their voicemail box PIN number here. Just enter 4 digits and save changes. All right, here's the option to send to an alternate address. Here's the option to include in the user directory. This pull down here allows you to change a user into an admin or an admin to a user. If you're the only user on the account, that means you're the only admin on the account, so please do not change yourself to a user. Little clock icon here, this allows you to change the time zone for this user, right? So that way their voicemail timestamps are correct. Little flag icon is the display language for these for this web pages for this user. You have English, French, German, or Russian. The ringing timeout by default is 20 seconds. That's plenty of time to send calls to a VoIP phone or a landline. If you have a user who's only going to use a cell phone, you probably want to increase this to about 30 seconds, possibly up to as long as 45. So in terms of how calls in telecom work, right? Calls that go to, say, a landline number, that landline telecom knows exactly where that phone is, so they just send the call through. Right? When you dial or call to a cell phone number, the cell phone telecom has to find that cell phone first, and then it sends the call through. It's that delay that trying to find the cell phone is why you would have to have a longer ring time for a cell phone user. Any changes you make, making sure you click on Save Changes. The extension box, you can add multiple extension numbers to a user if you want to. Again, it'll give you a suggestion, but you can enter in whatever you want. Users can have their own phone numbers if you want to, as can groups, among other things. So you have two options here, by numbers or add from spare. So add from spare is how you would reuse a number, right? If like you unassign a number first, and then you would assign it to someplace else. That's how you're reusing a number. Buying numbers adds a new number to your account. All right, so add from spare. You see I have these four numbers I'm not currently using, so I could add this toll-free number and add it here to Dante, and then I would save changes. So now he's got two phone numbers. All right, or if I go buy from new, I have local toll-free. Toll-free, choose the toll-free prefix. Click on search. Should give you a list of numbers. There we go. Scroll down to see more numbers, etc. Now, this list is referred to as a dynamic list. So it can be, you're essentially competing potentially with other people in real time. Right, so let's say you click add number. You haven't done anything. You haven't reserved this number or anything. It's still out in the wild. Someone else can grab it. Once you click on buy numbers, right, it's going to go through the process of verifying that no one else grabbed it, and then adds it to, in this case, this specific location. So now I have the number. So if I forget to save changes at this point, the number gets moved into spare, right? Or I just click on save changes, and now it's directly here on Dante. If we go to local, slightly different in that you need to know the area code you want a phone number in. Right? You do a search for any area code, and this includes the toll-free prefixes. You can get this message, right? It's saying that there's no readily available numbers in that particular area code. All right, 310 is in Southern California, near LA. So use your favorite search engine. And in this case, I would do a search for area code 310 overlay. And come back here to go back to search. That would tell me 424. Oops. And do a search. And now I have plenty of numbers, right? So any phone number that's in a major metropolitan area, you're going to want to check for overlays just because of cell phones, right? There are so many phone numbers in a given area code now that many major metropolitan areas have at least two overlays. And in some cases, like LA, not only does it have these two overlays, there's other nearby area codes. So you could also go with that. But again, you would click on Save Changes. Now you notice there's a little gear icon over here to the right of every number. You can update the caller ID for each phone number. Right? So you can update outbound CNAM for that phone number, and then turn on the ability to accept inbound CNAM. Right? So that way the information would show up on your staff members' VoIP phones. Right? E911, each phone number can have its own E911 address associated with it. That's useful because then you can assign that phone number to a specific VoIP phone for the purposes of 911 only. Right? So if that you assign this phone number to, Bob's Yealing phone. If Bob picks up his Yealing phone, dials 911, that address gets sent out to emergency services, and that would probably be different than, say, the address on your main number, right? Because you might have staff working remotely. Prepend is a VoIP phone feature. This allows you to add text in front of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones. Right? So in this case, when people call this particular number, the word direct shows up on Dante's VoIP phone, letting him know that the person called in on his direct number. All right, let's unassign most of these here, and then we'll click Save Changes. Now, when you add a phone number directly to a user or to a group, basically anything that's not the main number or auto-attended, that phone number is available 24/7, right? Does not have hours of operation, does not have holidays. So something to be aware of, especially for users that have a cell phone number, that's their personal cell phone number or a landline number as a contact, because then they can get calls at all times. Speaking of devices, so you can add new devices, right? New device is what we're going to concentrate on, but add different spares when how you reuse a device, right? Move it from one person to another. You would unassign a device first, so then it becomes a spare device, and then you assign it to the new location. New device here, first up is the SIP phone, right? That's that piece of hardware. You have these manufacturers to choose from. Some like Yealink have a ton of models. Others have like a dozen or maybe 2 dozen, right? Choose the make and model of the phone you're working with. Give it a name, Bob's phone, right? Warehouse phone, etc., or like front desk phone. And then get the MAC address. The MAC address is typically a sticker on the back of the phone. If the phone's plugged in, you can typically also get the MAC address under its status settings or basic settings in some cases. It's a combination of letters and numbers. And then click on Create Device. And then click on Save Changes. Now, once you do that, you want to click here again and click on the device name. And then go to Advanced and then select Miscellaneous. Where it says Allow Reprovision, click on this Unlock box. You'll get a green message. Actually, here. We'll click Unlock here. Right, you get this message here saying, hey, it's been unlocked. So click Save Changes. Click Save Changes here. So now I've told my system, hey, I'm going to get this device online, right? I'm going to program it. As far as our dashboard is concerned, you're done. You have to log into that phone's web user interface, right? The web UI. That means typically getting the IP address from the phone and putting that IP address into your web browser's address bar. That computer and that phone should be on the same network for this to work. You log into the phone. You might have to refer to the phone's manual. And basically you're giving a URL under its auto provision section. Basically the phone goes to that URL, grabs the config file, it's going to reboot a couple of times and then show up as a green device ready to work. For the specifics, in the show notes, click on the support pages URL, support.virtualpbx.com. Do a search for auto provisioning phones. It's going to have screenshots of these various manufacturers' interface, so telling you where exactly to go, where to look, this proper syntax for that URL. In some cases, other settings to double check, and then you should be all set. All right. Next up is cell phone and landline. They're the same process, right? Again, give it a name. And then here under the number, you put +1 area code and number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then click on Create Device, and then click on Save Changes. I'm going to click here on this one. So this is what it looks like, right? So I gave it a name, +1 area code and number. I go to the advanced options. This is the default settings for a new cell phone or landline device added to the account. So what happens? Right, call comes in, goes to my user. My cell phone rings, right? I pick up the phone because that's how I'm conditioned. When I pick up the phone, the first thing I hear is, this is a forwarded call. Please press 1. When I press 1, I'm telling the system, yes, I'm here, and yes, I want to take this call. Right? It then connects inbound caller to me. We begin speaking. That works fine when you're sending calls to an actual person to answer the call. However, let's say you're working with an automated answering service company, right? They said, hey, just send calls to this phone number. Our system will handle the calls for you for your after hours. So you would add that phone number as either a cell phone or landline. But in that instance, right, we're sending calls to an automated system. That automated system doesn't know to press 1, right? Because A, it's not really a person, and 2, it's a computer. It doesn't have fingers to press 1. It doesn't know when to send that tone. So what you would want to do is come here under these advanced options, and where it says allow use of cell phone's voicemail, put a check mark here, then click on Save Changes. So now when we send a call to your automated answering service, we hear that pickup tone, we connect the call, right? There's no message about this is a forwarded call, no need to press 1, right? Great for an automated answering service. If you do this on your actual cell phone, what could happen, however, is your cell phone voicemail can pick up. Still a pickup tone, right? So we connect the call. So that inbound caller can end up on your personal cell phone's voicemail. Some people want that. Some people definitely don't. The other thing that comes up sometimes is keep original caller ID. So customer Mary calls into the system, reaches my cell phone. On my cell phone's display, I see customer Mary's phone number. If I've been getting slammed by robo-dialers and telemarketers and I don't recognize the number, I may let it go to voicemail, which means I may or may not be able to help the customer and or complete the sale. So I can uncheck this, right? Click on Save Changes. So now, instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number on my cell phone, if we go back to the dashboard, right? This is the phone number I see on my cell phone's display. Hopefully I would recognize my main company number and say, oh, this is a business call. Let me answer it. All right, soft phone, right? This is a software application, right, that acts as a phone. So whenever you add a soft phone or web phone, you get this warning message. It's about wireless VoIP technology and 911, right? So basically, if you're out and about from your normal location, do not use your VoIP phone for dialing 911 because you're going to send the wrong address information to emergency services. So please make sure you read that at least once. So here you got this big box. It defaults to adding a third-party soft phone, meaning you're using somebody else's soft phone application. So if you're going to do that, give it a name. You're going to copy the SIP username. Click on the SIP password box to see the SIP password. Copy this. Do not change it or delete it or anything like that. And then here's your account realm. Right? Those are the three pieces of information we provide so you can provision or program that soft phone to work with us. Now, if you want to use the VirtualPBX soft phone app, down here below where it says View Configuration File, it says Use Third-Party Application. It's a toggle, though. You can click on this. So now it says Use VirtualPBX Application. Now I just need to give it a name. I click on Create Device. All right, oops. And then I click on Save Changes. Once I click on Save Changes, Dante will get an email saying his VirtualPBX soft phone is ready. It's going to include his login information specific to the soft phone app and then have download links so he can use the soft phone either on his Android or iPhone or on a Windows or Mac PC. Now, you can use those credentials on multiple devices, right? So I could use it on my computer or I can use it on my cell phone, but I can't use it at the same time. Right? So let's say most of the time I use it on my computer, but I'm going to be away from my computer for a while, but I still want to take calls. I log out of the cell phone app on my computer, then log into the app on my cell phone. Right? And then the last one I want to cover here is the web phone. Again, you get that little warning message. You just need to give it a name and then click on Create Device and then Save Changes. The web phone uses your dash login information, so you don't need to do anything else other than have your users go to webphone.virtualpbx.net and log in. But since it needs that login information, you want to create it and assign on the user right off the bat. All right, user features. First up is caller ID number. This is for users that have their own phone number, right? So you assign a phone number directly to them, and you want to have, when they make an outbound call, to be their phone number on their user, not your main number. All right, so you click up here to enable, you select a phone number that's on the user, and then Save Changes. So once you do that, whenever I make an outbound call from my VoIP phones, right, that 424 number here that I selected, that's my outbound caller ID, not the main number I set up under the dashboard. Right, so useful for like your sales staff, right? Because they want people to call them directly instead of going through the system. The voicemail box, again, created with the user. These are the default setting, right? So we attach voicemails to email, right? We're making an attachment. So when the user gets a voicemail, right, they get an email letting you know the date, the time, the phone numbers are not involved, and the voicemail box number in question. There'll also be an MP3 attachment, right? So they can just click on it and listen to the file and they can handle the message. Now, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and cannot accept any more. Right? So just listening to an email doesn't actually delete the message, right? It lets you listen to it. You can call into your system as long as your system goes to the virtual receptionist, right? Or your main numbers go to the virtual receptionist. Because when you hear that main greeting play, you can hit *97 from any phone, right? Except from your cell phone. The system will then ask you for your voicemail box number and your PIN number, and you can listen to your message over the phone. You can also delete them over the phone. You can also get to your user portal. It defaults you to your voicemail tab. So you can listen to the message here. You can download it. If you put a check mark here at the beginning, you can change its status. Then it won't be deleted. Now, if you have a very busy voicemail box that you don't want to get full, then you also have the option here to delete after notification, right? So basically, we send out that email, and once that email goes out, the system deletes the voicemail box or the voicemail message from the voicemail box, so it never becomes full. The downside or the limitation of that is you can only ever check your voicemail messages via email. You can't log in via the dashboard like I just showed, or you can't call in because the message is already gone. Follow me. This is for users with multiple devices. Up here is where you enable it, and this is how you as an admin choose how phones or calls are offered to the user's devices. Now, by default, it sets to do not ring, which is probably not ideal. So under that column here at the far right, you want to uncheck the devices you want to make use of. Now you've got the little green bar here. You can click and drag to give those devices a ring time. Or up here along the top, these are timestamps. And this last one you can edit. It defaults to 120 seconds. But that means you can click distribute here. Right? So now I'm splitting how long the call is offered between my two devices. Right? If I think that's too long, right, I can change my total ring time and then click distribute again. So now it's only 30 seconds. I can still adjust these, right? So I can give myself some overlap, for instance, right? So that's great. Or if I want to, I can change the order and then click distribute again. Now, this is something you as an admin have to set up for the user, right? Not something they can do themselves. So that's something to be aware of. Fax box, up here, you can choose to have a user have their own fax box. You click here to enable. So then you're given the option to add a spare number, buy a new number, or assign a new extension. I recommend making use of a phone number. Gives the user maximum versatility. When you choose to assign an extension number, right, you have to find an open extension number, which typically not a big deal. But that limits the user, right? In terms of if they once you assign an extension number to their fax box, they'll never be able to send a fax out because the system will use that extension number as the outbound caller ID and it fails. Likewise, you potentially limit who can send them a fax. Like electronic fax services, at least most that I've encountered, don't allow to add an extension. They just say, hey, put in a phone number and send the fax. So that means this user wouldn't be able to get a fax from those people. Additionally, even for an analog fax machine, you're relying on the person who's sending a fax to know how to send to an extension number, right? The default would be they sit there at the fax machine waiting for that main greeting to play, then enter the extension number, and then send fax. Or they know that their fax machine allows them to add extra characters like, comma, comma, or something to add a pause before they enter the extension number. Conference Bridge, this is where you enable a user to host or moderate a conference. You would click up here to enable. Right here is where you enter a conference room number, PIN number for the user. This is something they can change under the user portal. The enable video conferencing, that's with in-house use only, right? So anyone outside of your Dash account won't be able to make use of video in a conference. Call forwarding, you have off, on, or failover mode. Your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own via the user portal, right? Failover mode, this is for your VoIP phone users, so that if and you have to set it up for them. Basically, if their VoIP phone goes offline for any reason, you can set up a phone number here, right? +1 area code number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, that the system will automatically forward the call to while their VoIP phone's offline, right? So, like, your staff member Bob, let's say he temporarily loses internet, right? Let's say, a backhoe nearby hit his connection, so he's offline, and a call comes to his user at that time or just after that time, right? The system will automatically forward to this number instead. Now, so this user, right? I have multiple devices, and one of them is a cell phone, and I left follow me off. Without follow me on, right? Calls to my user ring all of my devices at the same time. So in that kind of instance, there's no point in call forwarding because I'm already forwarding it to an outside number. Right? Now, if I'm going to forward to a different number, then I would make use of call forwarding. But beyond that, I don't really need to on this user. Customize call recording. You click here to enable this to record your calls. You have 4 options. By default, it starts off looking like this. You have to tell the system what kind of calls you want to record. So inbound internal, right? That means my coworker called me. So Dante called me. Maybe I want to record that. Maybe I don't. Right? Inbound external, customer Mary called me. Probably want to record that. Right? Outbound internal, I called coworker Dante. Right? And then outbound external means I called customer Mary. So we often see something like this, right? These two or all. Now, your account includes some amount of data storage as part of your monthly plan price. Check the pricing page if you just signed up with us, so that way you can see that. If you're recording every call and you're having heavy call volume, you're going to want to look up about AWS storage or integration, right? So you would have to have an Amazon Web Services account, but you can link that with your Dash account. Now, in order to have that AWS integration turned on, you need to speak to our account services team, because that's a feature they have to enable. But once that's done, you can then link the two, right? So that way Amazon's handling your call storage, and especially with high volume, it's going to be much more cost effective. Music on hold. You can choose to have your users have their own hold music if you want to. So you click to enable, and then you upload a file, right? .wav.mp3 up to 1 megabyte in size. Click browse to find the file, click the up arrow icon, click save changes. So for instance, like if you want your sales staff to have a version of hold music that talks about promotions that are going on, right? Versus the rest of your staff, you're like, no, they can just have our general hold music that we set up on their dashboard. Do not disturb. If you turn this on a user, that means they're not accepting calls. Right? Hot desking is a VoIP phone feature. So up here, you click to enable. You can enter a hot desk ID. So if you use 4-digit extensions, I just say use their extension number as their hot desk ID, save changes. So this is for a shared office environment or hybrid scheduling, i.e. I don't have a set desk at the office, for instance, right? So I come in on Tuesdays, I sit down at one of the available open desks, say desk number 2. I pick up the handset there. For the VoIP phone, I hit *11. That turns on hot desking on that phone. I enter my hot desk ID. The system then tells me calls will now be sent to this device. Rest of my workday, calls that are trying to go to my user ring on the phone I'm sitting at. End of my day, I pick up that handset. I hit *12 to turn off hot desking. I go home. Next time I come into the office, let's say that's on Friday, same thing. But let's say this time I'm sitting at desk number 5. Right? Pick up the phone, *11, enter hot disk ID. Calls are coming to me at desk number 5. All right, groups, sometimes referred to as ring groups or hunt groups. Think of it as departments, right? A group of people who answer calls about a similar topic. Up here at the top, you click on Add Group. You need to give it a name. You need to give it an extension number. And then you click and drag your staff members over, and then click on Create Group. So once a group is created, it'll show up here. You can click on the name. You can always change the name of a group. And it's something you pretty much need to know, right? It's up to you if you need to make it public facing in terms of like the main greeting on your account. The group call attempts, you have little arrows here so you can increase or decrease this. This is how many times the system will offer the inbound call to your group members, right? So you can set it to once, for instance, so it only offers it to them one time, right? Increase it to increase the number of attempts. Here's your option to remove a group. Otherwise, click on Save Changes. To the right of that, we have the members box that shows my staff members who are assigned to the group and how I'm offering calls to them. So right now, I'm offering to them what's called ring all or blast ringing, right? So rings them all at the same time for the same amount of time. Whoever picks up the call first gets the call. One little caveat here, in this kind of instance, let's say Taylor and David pick up the call at the same time. Well, only one of them can get the call, right? So let's say Taylor gets the call, right? So David's sitting there going, hello, hello. There's no one there. So he hears dead air. Now, if Taylor and David are in the same office, right, it's possible and probably likely that David could hear Taylor on the phone and go, oh, Taylor got a call, not a big deal. Working remotely, you would have to use something like Slack to confirm that someone got the call versus assuming that there's a problem with the system or with someone's phones, etc. And an admin can check the call logs to get a better idea of that. Now, along the top here, we have timestamps. It defaults to 120 seconds, right? I can change that down, right? Or I can change it to, say, 400. I still have this distribute option, so now I can equalize calls over time, over that time span. Now, let's set this down to 120. Make that a little bit more normal-ish. Now, so let's say a call comes in, right? Taylor answers that call. But then a second call comes in almost immediately after. Well, that second call is still offered to Taylor, right? The system is not going to skip him. So after 40 seconds, that second call then gets offered to David. Now, if a third call comes in, right? Taylor and David are still on that first call. That third call still gets offered to both of them before it's offered to Dante, right? Not ideal, right? But again, you can adjust these to shorten that ring time if you want. Now, you can also click and drag to change the order around. So then like Dante's at the front. But again, you probably want to do something like that. Now, ACD queues or the call center queues, right? They're an advanced version of the groups, right? So calls in a group, in that scenario where like calls come in like back to back to back, like really quickly, that second and third call would skip the person who's on a call in the queue, right? So Taylor answered that first call within a queue. Second call comes in, it doesn't even try to offer to him. It just goes to the next available person. That's one of the advantages of a queue over a group. Right, down here at the bottom left is where you can add additional users to a group if it's getting busy. Over here to the right, you can hit remove to remove someone who's no longer part of that team. Extensions, right? Groups can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. Groups can have their own phone numbers, right? You can either buy new or add from spare. And just like on users, this phone number is available 24/7. Group features. First up is ringback. You click up here to enable this. So call comes into a group, right? Offered to your staff members. Their phones start to ring. That ring sound is then sent back to the inbound caller, right? That's where the word term ringback comes from. If you don't want that ringing sound to play to your inbound caller, then you would enable ringback and then upload your own MP3 or .wav file up to 1 megabyte. Now, the system is not going to loop this file for you. So you want to make sure your file is at least as long as the total ring time of your group, right? So default is 2 minutes. So make sure your media file is 2 minutes long. Next action, to me, the most important feature, Up here is where you enable it, but it's for if no one picks up, what do you want the system to do with the call? And this pull down basically shows you your options. You can send it back to your main menu. You can send it to a different group. You can send it to a specific user or even a specific phone, right? Or most commonly, a voicemail box, right? So the person can leave a message. Allow call forward. If you enable this, that means your users can make use of call forwarding. But again, if they have a cell phone device, then you may not need to make use of call forwarding anyway. And then caller ID prepend, this is for your VoIP phone users. This allows you to put either text or numbers in front of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones, right? Basically to give them a heads up about the kind of call they're getting. I recommend using one or the other. I happen to prefer text just because that's easier and how my brain works. But up to you on how you want to make use of that. All right, so now that we have users with devices and groups, let's go to main number. Up here at the top, your main company numbers. You can always add from your spare or buy new to have more main numbers. You got the little gear icon here to update caller ID, E911, or prepend. Then you've got your open office hours. By default, new accounts start off at 24 open hours, right? But you can choose to be custom office hours. If you do so, for each day of the week that you're open, put a check mark in front of that day. In these boxes here to the right, select your open hours in 24-hour or military time. Down here, you can choose to have your system close at lunch for the same time for every day that you're open. All right, just put a check mark here and then enter your lunch hours in 24-hour or military time, and then save changes. Office holidays. Are you closed for holidays? Yes or no? Right, put a check mark if you are. If you are, then over here to the right, you have your add holiday options. You have single day, date range, and advanced. Single day, like I have here for Christmas Day, you give it a name, you choose the month and the date, then click on Save Changes. Date range, I have here for holiday, right? So I gave it a name, a start date, and an end date, Save Changes. And then here, Memorial Day is advanced, where I gave it a name, I choose the month. This second pull down, you have first through fifth as well as last, and then the day of the week, and then Save Changes. If you need to remove a holiday, click on the little trash icon and then Save Changes. Incoming call handling. So for those three main numbers, how do I want my system to handle calls during my open hours, during my after hours, during my holidays? All right. So first up, during my open hours, I have calls coming into my virtual receptionist. This is a link that I can click on, opens a big old box. First up on the left here is my main menu, right? So these are menu options people can press on their phone to navigate through my system. I can click on Add Route here at the bottom. Gives me a new row. This first pull down, you have 0 through 9, the star key, and the default action. The second pull down is everything you have on the account. The directory, any users you've added, any call queues if you're making use queues, any groups you've added, any specific devices you've added. So you can bring a particular phone if you want to, and then any voicemail box. Right, so that's why you want to have those things created before you get to the main number. Your greeting options. The greeting is where you say, thank you for calling, usually your organization name, and then you want to give directions to your customer in terms of how to navigate through the system. Right, so I'd say, press 0 to leave a message, press 1 for our sales team, 2 for support, etc. First up is text-to-speech. So here you type in a greeting, and the system will read it back in a computerized or robotic voice. This is fine for many customers, especially good though if you're just getting started with us, right? Or getting started in general, or you're just not sure yet how you want your system to flow. Now, a couple limitations. In this box here, you can type up to 250 characters, not words. Now, the system doesn't count spaces as part of that character, so you have a little bit of leeway there. I have sometimes been able to add above that, but 250 works consistently. The other thing to be aware of is you're not allowed to name the file. It names it for you. So in this case, I'm in my open hours. So it's going to call it main open hours menu TTS. Right? If I make an edit to this file, this reading that's here now, then I'll have two files called main open hours menu TTS, which can be confusing from any pull down menu. So if you start off using main open menus TTS, that's fine. But once you click update, save, and save changes, over here under greetings, find that file, and then to the right of it, click on the wrench icon, and you can change the name just to something you could recognize so you can differentiate between these various greetings, save changes. You can upload your own file, right? .wav, .mp3, up to 1 megabyte. Find the file on your computer, and then upload, save, and save changes. You can also enter the name, so that way you can recognize it. Choose from an existing recording, right? So from any of your greetings that are already, or any of your media files that are on the account, right? So that includes your readback files, hold music, voicemail greetings, main greetings. That's why you want names that you can easily differentiate between what is what. You can record it over the phone. When it says pick up a phone registered on the account, that means a VoIP phone. Right? That's a security feature. Basically, because the system knows by default that a phone that's registered on the account is part of the account, so it's safe to use. Now, if you want to use an outside line, right, so you want to call from your cell phone, then under settings, right, so down here, where it says allow outside recording, turn that on. So now any phone number you called in from has the ability to change your main greeting. Now, you will still need this PIN number. Right? PIN number is specific to the time of day. So my system here is set up to be open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. This PIN number, since I'm in my open hours, only works Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Right? So if I call in on Saturday, it won't work. I'll get an invalid entry message. So I can only change my main open hours over the phone during my actual open hours. Now, when you have a greeting file in place, right? So I have a text-to-speech greeting in place. If I call in, I can still change it over the phone, right? When that greeting plays, I enter my PIN number. The system will then walk me through creating a voicemail greeting over the phone, or I'm sorry, my main greeting over the phone. That file that I just created, right? The file name doesn't change on the system, but the content changes. I bring that up just because we're getting towards the holiday season here in the US, and sometimes people run out of time, call in and change their main greeting over the phone to their holiday greeting, but then they don't have a copy of the original main greeting that they had, and we don't keep multiple copies, right? We just, since we overwrite it. So something to be aware of. Professional recording services. When you click order, this opens a new tab, takes you to Snap Recordings, and you can order a professionally done recording. They have 100 actors and actresses to choose from. They bill you directly via credit card. They send you the file via email. So then you would just come back to upload your own file. All right, under settings here, we have number of retries on misdial. This is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake, right? So in this case, I'm giving them one mistake, which means they get 2 total attempts, right? So just add +1 to this number here, and that's how many total attempts your customer gets. Dialing timeout, that's how much time the system listens for an additional button press, right? So inbound caller comes in and presses 7. Well, the system's going to wait for 2 seconds before it assumes that means they're done, right? So they only meant to enter 7. So it looks up to see if there's a menu option 7. There's not. If there's not an extension number 7, it ends the call. All right. Now, if I have a default action, what can happen is after their 2 attempts, if they failed on both of them, then the system will send them to the default route. So we did not recognize your entry, and then please wait while your call is transferred. Right? If I don't have a default action, then the system says we did not recognize your entry, goodbye. Allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on, and this just means if someone enters a valid extension number, the system just transfers the call to that extension. Right? If I turn this off, that means my inbound caller can only press the menu options. and then the suppress the playing of invalid entry, right? So let's put that default route in place. Right, so customer calls in, they enter 2 wrong attempts, then my system says we did not recognize your entry and then transfers the call. If I don't want that message of we did not recognize your entry to play, I turn this on. So now that message does not play, right? I'm turned on suppression. Okay, any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, make sure you click save here, and then make sure you click save changes here under incoming call handling. You're clicking save twice. Right, so for my after hours menu, I've chosen the second option, which is the live operator answer option. This first pull down allows you to select anything on your system, right? So you can send it to a user, you can send it to a group, a call queue, a device, right? But basically the idea here is you're giving somebody or several people in the name of a group to answer the call first, right? If they're not able to answer the call, then it goes to your virtual receptionist. Now, this is my after hours, right? So I have likely a different greeting and different menu options in place. But beyond that, it's the same basic concept of, adding routes, creating a greeting, etc. The third option here, during my holidays, in this case, I'm telling the system to don't offer the call to anybody and instead send it to my main voicemail box. Now, this pull down, I can send it to a user, I can send it to a group, I can send the caller to a media file, right? So it can play a holiday greeting and then goes to my voicemail box, what have you. Right, the skip to voicemail is the last option down here. All right, the main conference number, you can have multiple conference room numbers, so I can add new ones here or new spare. You also have a custom greeting as a text-to-speech greeting. You would click here to enable and then type in the greeting you want to say here. Even without this, right, if I leave this disabled, the system says welcome to the conference and prompts the inbound caller to enter the conference room number and PIN number. The main fax box number, you can only have the one fax box number. But once you do, you can click edit fax box here. The inbound notification email, right, designed to put an email address in here. You can put multiple separated by a comma, no spaces. But basically, every time you get a fax, Rose here gets an email saying you have a new fax. Here's the date, the time, phone numbers involved, PDF attachment. Now, if someone dials my fax box number from their cell phone, right, here's fax tones and then hangs up, Rose is still getting an email saying that there was a failed inbound fax attempt. Now, hopefully in the body of that message, it'll have the caller ID and says wireless number. So that was, a wrong number, wrong dial. Right, but if it's a phone number you recognize or we're expecting a fax from, then you'd want to reach out to that other people and let them know, hey, it didn't get through. Email permissions, this is so you can set up outbound faxing. It's designed to put your company's email domain here, right? So in this case, everyone at VirtualPBX can send a fax out from the system, even if they're not a user on my Dash account here. They just need the proper format, right? That +1 area code and number, and then the account realm, and then attach a PDF or TIFF file. You could also just put like a single email address there, for instance, right? So you only want, Bob to be able to send faxes, so you can just put Bob's email address there. All right, auto attendance. This is a plan-specific feature, so it's on some plans and not others. There's a couple use cases for additional auto attendance. One is for submenuing, right? So if you want an English option and a Spanish option on when people first call your number, then you would create an auto attendant for English and Spanish, which would have a greeting in the appropriate language. And then the menu options would go to your staff members who speak those languages. The other option is because you have multiple businesses and you want them on the same account, right? You don't want to have an account for each business. But here you create a new attendant, right? So you give it a name, you give it a new extension. Click on create attendant. Now, in the case of a separate business, when you click on the name, you want to leave it as unavailable in main menu because it's a standalone, right? It's its own separate entity, right? So, but like for my English or Spanish here, I would probably want to turn this on to be available in main menu. So that way it's a menu option. And that way, it can be like a next action option, for instance, or it can actually be a menu option people can press on from your main menu. For the standalone antennas, you probably are going to add a phone number, right? So they have their own phone numbers. And then under settings, right, you click on the little wrench icon. You'll see here I've open hours, after hours, and holidays, right? So that's going to match what we set up under the main number. But these are all virtual receptionists, so I can set up their own greetings. I can set up their own menu options, etc. That we just, again, you can add route. You have your normal greeting options. Any changes, save, and then save changes. Devices shows your devices on the account, right? Green means it's registered, so we can send calls to it. Red, unregistered, so we can't send calls to it. Doesn't tell us why. We just know we can't send calls to it. And then down here, black means I've turned it off on my system over here under the enable column. Right? You can add devices directly here, but you can't assign them anywhere. Right? So it's just the most common situation is for like the IT guy is setting up a new location. So he just adds all the devices, but he doesn't know who's who and who's going where. You can click on the little wrench icon here under the edit. So for audio, for a physical device, you typically want to see G711U or G711A over here on the right. You can just click and drag the codecs over right and left. Oh, oops, I did not mean to close that out. External call ID, you could set up so that this is the normal outbound call ID for this phone. So every time the person dials out from the phone is this phone number instead of using the user feature. Like, so good for like a hot desking phone that you want to have a specific outbound call ID on. Right? The emergency caller ID, right? So this allows you to select the specific phone number that this phone uses when they call 911. Right? So this is the address that gets transmitted to emergency services. So for your remote working staff, you want to have the correct address for them. And that is pretty much it on that. Oh, up here is how you add the various devices. Oh, soft phone. One thing to point out is here, you don't have that toggle at the bottom. So if you're adding a soft phone on the devices page, you can only add a third-party soft phone. Right? So if you want to make use of the VirtualPBX soft phone, you have to do it on the users page. The greetings manager shows all your media files on the account. Right? The name is what it's called. The source, TTS, text-to-speech. Upload means you uploaded the file. Recording means it was recorded over the phone. You can play back the file directly in your browser. If for some reason that doesn't work, you can download the file to your device and listen to it on your device's media player. And then the option to edit, which again, you can change the name, or you can delete a greeting if it's not in use. So I'm going to get rid of this one, for instance. Now I have one less greeting. All right, numbers. Starts off on numbers in use. This basically shows you where you have numbers assigned. You cannot unassign or assign numbers here. You got the little gear icon here, though, so you can update the caller ID E911 or prepend for any number. Spare numbers. This shows the numbers you're not currently using. This is also where you would delete a number from your account. Right? So you would look through the system, find the phone numbers you don't want on the account any longer. Right, click on the box in front of it, and now I have this option to delete shows up here at the top. It says, are you sure? I confirmed the deletion. Click continue, and now I have less phone numbers on my account. All right, so buy. Again, local or toll free, right? Just adds them as a new spare number. Port is moving a phone number. Specifically, you're moving it from one carrier to another. So from, say, Comcast to VirtualPBX, you give it a name. You choose local or toll-free. You typically don't want to do a mix of both. You just do two separate requests. Click next. Then you need to upload a PDF of your most recent bill from the current carrier, right? So say from Comcast bill, basically, right? Choose I recognize, or what is it? I acknowledge the date is within 30 days. Then you would continue on. The system will allow you to download a blank letter of agency or LOA, and then you can upload a completed and signed LOA. The LOA does need a signature, whether that's a digital signature file or you printed it out, signed it, and scanned it back in. But printing your name twice gets rejected. Typing your name twice gets rejected. And the other carrier doesn't have to respond right away, right? So if you, and when we see a printed or typed in LOA, like we let you know saying, hey, we need a signature assigned version of this. Anytime we've tried to send it through without that, a couple days later, typically, they come back, we get back a rejection. So it just delays when the port can complete. Typically speaking, a toll-free number, if everything's correct, ports in about a week, right? 3 to 5 business days is the range. Local numbers average about 2 to 3 weeks. If we get a rejection, we try to double check to make sure there wasn't a typo on our side in any way, or if there's alternate information, right? So like, let's say your LOA has 2 different addresses, right? You have a billing address and a service address. We try them both to see if that will go through, right? But if there's nothing else we can correct or that we can see that we can correct easily, we let you know, hey, we're getting this rejection reason. That means you have to contact the current carrier to get the correct information to port out. Mobile numbers and some VoIP numbers, and actually some Canadian numbers for that matter, the carrier may require a PIN number to port out. You typically have to contact them to get that PIN number. And then I'm trying to think of anything else that would come up. Those are the big things. All right, voicemail boxes. This shows all your voicemail boxes on the account. Anything with an entry under the user, that means it was a voicemail box created with the user at the same time. Up here at the top, though, you can create your own voicemail boxes. Right? You just need to give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number. Click on Create Voicemail Box. So, for instance, I could do that for my support group, right? So I don't have to use a person's voicemail box for the group. I can have their own separate voicemail box. Now, the voicemail box number and PIN number, that would be used to log into the voicemail over the phone so I can listen to the messages or change the greeting. One thing to keep in mind, the voicemail box number is not an extension number, right? So someone dialing 3, not going to get here, not to this voicemail box. They'll get to my menu option 3 if I have a menu option 3, or if I have someone with extension number 3 or a group, it would go to that. It's not going to go to the voicemail box number 3. Now, after a voicemail box is created, over here under Advanced, let's go to Greeting Media. You have 2 options, media file and temporary. You typically want something in the media file, although if with nothing here, the system does say, please leave a message after the tone. The temporary file is for the out of office or vacation message, right? If you have a temporary file and a media file with media, right? They both have files selected, only the temporary file plays. The media file will not play again until you set temporary back to none. And this is actually something your users can do over the phone if they want to, using feature codes. Recipients, your user voicemail boxes have one built-in recipient, right? That email address used for login. But for any voicemail you create here, you want to click here where it says add email, right? Enter an email address. And you can keep clicking add until you're done adding email addresses, which you could also do to your user voicemail boxes. And then save changes. And like something we see for like, especially on user voicemail boxes, if you know how your cell phone provider changes text to email, or email to text, excuse me, right? You can enter in your cell phone number's quote email address, right? So then we send an email to it, and then you get a text saying, hey, you have a new message. And then options. So once a voicemail box has a media file and has recipients, you can click on the box in front of already set up. So that means people can't change it, right? So if you want to change the greetings, you need to uncheck that. And then beyond that, you want to make sure that you have the attach the messages to email. And like in this case, this is my support uh, voicemail box. I don't want this voicemail box to ever get full. So then I would delete after notification so it doesn't get full. Right? And then click on Save Changes. Text forward. This allows you to have a phone number accept text and forward it out. It's not for back and forth communication. Up here at the top, you click on Add Number. You choose a phone number on your account, and then you choose either to enter in an email address or a webhook. A webhook would mean you'd have webhooks enabled on your account. But basically, that means you're sending the text to some other software. Right? So like you can send it to a Zapier, which then can do something else with it, etc. So basically, anyone get a text on any one of these four phone numbers here are being sent to these email addresses. So that way someone is aware, hey, you got a text about, and it has the actual text message, so you know what it's about. Call logs, this shows the call history on the account. You can go today, this week, this month. You can download these files as a CSV file. So if you're good with spreadsheets, you'll be able to get a lot more information out of it. You can also go back custom and change the date range. So a green arrow to the right is a call coming into the system. Let's see if I can. I want one that has a decent length here. Right, so here you can see call being offered several times. Right, so the first leg is the incoming leg, right? Each of these other legs is calls going out from the system to the device on the user. So you can see what devices were in play. The yellow arrow to the left is an outbound call on the system. The little fire extinguisher icon here, this lets you report the call, right? So it creates an email for you, pre-addressed to support@virtualpbx.com, has the technical details. Please include why you're sending the email. The technical details don't always give us clear information about why. For the custom, the system lets you go back up to 1 year. If you need further than that, our engineers can go back up to 18 months, but you'd have to contact our support team to do that. So if you need your call logs for any kind of compliance reasons, I would recommend doing this at least on a monthly basis. Feature codes are ways for your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their VoIP phone. I've talked about a couple of these. If you go to the support pages, do a search for feature codes, and that's where any of your staff members can get them. You can also do a search for the phone commands cheat sheet, which has the feature codes, but it also has this context help, which might be more useful for your staff. All right, so that's the dashboard. Next up, we have blacklists. This allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you're blocking from reaching your staff. All right, so like those robo-dialers or spammers, whatever. So over here or to the top right, click Edit Blacklists. Click Add to create a new list, or you can click on an existing list. Right, so you need to give a name. Blocking anonymous calls, by default, this is off. Right, and that means if a call comes in and is not displaying any kind of caller ID, right, when this is off, that means they can come through. Otherwise, you can turn this on and they get busy tone. Beyond that, down here, you click Add Number, +1 area code or number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. Keep clicking Add until you're done adding numbers. Once you're done doing so, click on Save. Back to Settings up here at the top right. Make sure your list is over here on the right. Right, that means you might have to click and drag it over. And then no matter what, even if it was already here, right, click Update. So now any phone number that's on these lists, when they try to call into your system, it will show up in your call log, but they're not going to be able to ring through. They will get busy tone. call recording. So if you're not using the AWS integration, this will open up a new tab and take you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. Uses your dash login, and then you can view your recordings, play them, download them, etc. If you have AWS set up like I do here, you would have a link to your AWS account. So I would have to probably take this back to last month. Right, and then I can see my recordings. Now I can only play back and download. If I need to actually delete these, I would have to log into my AWS account directly and delete there. Monitor is a plan-specific feature. Allows you to see the status of your staff members, whether by employee or by devices. And then you can also go everything, who's available, who's busy. Also over here, active inbound calls. Each one would be in a blue box showing the phone number they're calling in from and who they're speaking to. Parked calls, this means if your staff members make use of the call parking feature, right? The person's phone number and their parking spot number would show up here. Reports, another plan-specific feature, opens a new tab, takes you to reports.virtualpbx.com. Go down in the show notes and look at the advanced reporting demo. That will show you how these work. Basically allows you to create your own reports. Pretty powerful feature. One thing to keep in mind is once the feature is enabled, after you talk to our account services team, it's after that point going forward, the data shows up. Anything before that will not be available. Voicemails, this lets you get to any voicemail box on the account. Right, so you can see if a voicemail box is full, you can listen to it, download it, put a check mark here. This allows you to move a voicemail as an admin to another voicemail box, as well as you can change the status. AWS, this has to be activated, but once it is, it's from access key through bucket, these three pieces of information. That's what you need to get from your AWS account. The URL here is always the same. Call center is ACD-Queues. If you look in the show notes, you can look at the ACD-Queues Pro demo. Queues are a powerful version of groups. Not only can your staff members like sign themselves in and out of a queue, which they can't do in a group, they can mark themselves away for like when they're at lunch. Also, managers can eavesdrop in on a call, whisper or barge in. Dynamic caller ID, plan specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change the outbound caller ID. So here, I just created a rule. I gave it a name. I'm saying, hey, whenever my staff members dial a 702 number, make this the outbound caller ID. And this is for their VoIP phones. This one here. Select the phone number. So I'll select this number here. So now whenever my staff members dial *951, then area code and phone number, the system will automatically change their outbound caller ID to this 424 phone number. This one's a little harder to use, but you might be necessary if you have to change to several different caller IDs within the same area code, for example. Faxes is your fax box manager. So you can get to any fax box on the account. You can see the inbound faxes. You can download them. You can even choose to delete them if you have too many. Outbound fax tab, right, shows your fax history going out. Now, when you have a failure here, yeah, you can mouse over to get an idea of why it failed. And it's basically saying this was a valid phone number, except that we didn't get any fax tones when we picked up. That's what that message means. So any failures on this page means we had a problem with the other phone number. Whereas if you see anything here under email to fax logs, that means the system had a problem with the request, right? So you can see the email addresses involved. So you see these are the proper format. So then you want to click on the little eyeball icon here, and you see that the problem was no valid attachment. So they either didn't include a PDF or TIFF, right? So nothing at all, or like a JPEG or something else. Number manager basically takes you back to your spare numbers page. Webhooks, plan-specific feature, allows you to link your Dash account to other software. In the show notes, the Introduction to Zapier webinar will cover some of this. You can also go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see what we have done in terms of linking Dash to other software. This is programming, right? So some people, like myself, not my strongest suit. So something to be aware of. If you're interested in this, you'd want to talk to our sales team. SMS registration, this is so you can start your registration process. I clicked on the wrong thing. So if you want to make use of texting, you're going to need to go through this process. And then lastly, we have the user portal. Right, so this is where I check my own personal voicemails. I can see my call history, right? I can go back to the previous month. The fax tab only works for users that have their own fax box, right? So they can see their fax history. Contact list shows everything on the Dash account, right? So if I need to transfer calls to another user or group, etc., this can help me with that. Conference tab will only work for staff members that have their own their own conference, right? You've enabled conferencing on them. Here is where they would adjust their moderator and participant PIN numbers. They want to make sure they're different numbers, right? Here's where you choose people to come in muted or deafened, play entry and exit tones, right? And you would click save. Up here over on the top left, the plus icon lets you invite other Dash users to your Dash account, or I mean to your conference. Lock a conference, unlock it, or sorry, mute everybody, unmute everybody, and the conference. Each person has their own either moderator or participant box, so you can mute a specific person as well as kick out. And then settings and devices. This is where your staff members can set up their own call forwarding. Just put +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then uncheck when they're done. Right? Oh, check. Actually, check, enter information, save, and then when they're done, uncheck, and then save again. That's everything, and I don't see any questions, so I'll go ahead and end the stream. I thank you for your time today. We'll be back next Tuesday at 10 a.m.